The iron gate slammed shut behind her with a sound that echoed like a final judgment. Dust hung in the air, glowing gold under the harsh afternoon sun, and the crowd murmured, some with curiosity, some with hunger, most with indifference. She stood in the center of the auction yard, wrists bound, chin lifted despite the bruises along her arms. She had learned long ago that lowering her head only invited more cruelty. Her name was Ayana, and today she was being sold. She did not cry. She had cried enough during the long journey from her burned village, enough when her parents fell to the ground and did not rise, enough when chains replaced freedom. Tears were a luxury for those who still believed someone might care. Ayana no longer did. She stared past the men inspecting her like livestock, past the leering smiles and whispered prices, and waited for it to end. That was when she saw him. He stood apart from the others, leaning against a wooden post as if he had wandered into the wrong place and did not know how to leave. His clothes were worn patched more times than they could count, boots caked with mud from honest labor. His hat was pulled low, shadowing eyes that were tired but alert. He didn't smile. He didn't bargain loudly. He just watched, jaw tight, hands clenched like he was holding back something heavy. His name was Eli Carter, a rancher who owned more land than money and more regrets than dreams. He hadn't planned to be at the auction. He had come to town to sell a calf and buy feed before winter tightened its grip. But when he heard the auctioneer's voice and saw the chains, something old and bitter stirred in his chest. He told himself to walk away. Men like him didn't change the world. Men like him barely survived it. The bidding started low, then rose fast. Eli felt each number like a hammer striking his ribs. He thought of his ranch, the broken fence, the empty house where silence sat heavier than any ghost. He thought of the promise he once made to his younger brother, a promise broken by fear and inaction. He told himself again to leave. But when the auctioneer grabbed Ayana's chin and forced her face up, Eli moved. His voice came out rough, louder than he expected. "I'll pay." The yard fell silent. Heads turned. The auctioneer squinted at him, measuring the weight of his words against the thinness of his coat. "You got the money, rancher?" Eli swallowed. He didn't. Not really. Not without losing something important. But he nodded anyway. "I'll pay what you're asking." The deal was done quickly. Almost too quickly. Almost too quickly. Like the world feared he might change his mind. Coins clinked into a dirty hand. The chains were removed. Ayana stood free, stunned, her wrists burning where iron had been. She turned to Eli, eyes sharp and searching. "Why?" she asked, her voice steady but low. Eli shrugged, suddenly unsure of himself. "That didn't seem right," he said. "You're free now. You can go wherever you want." He expected gratitude, maybe confusion. He did not expect what came next. Ayana stepped closer, so close he could see the faint scar along her cheek, the quiet strength in her eyes. She studied him like a decision already made was settling into place. Then she spoke words that froze him to the bone. "You paid for me," she said. "By our law, that makes you my husband." The world tilted. Eli laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. No, you're free. I didn't buy you like that. Our ways are older than this place," she interrupted gently but firmly. Firmly. A life paid for is a life bound. I do not belong to you as a thing. I choose you as my husband." People stared, whispers spread. Eli felt heat rush to his face, panic clawing at his chest. He had barely survived being alone. How could he be someone's husband? How could he accept something he didn't understand? "I can't," he said. "I won't trap you again. You don't owe me anything." Ayana's gaze softened. "I owe you nothing," she agreed. "That is why this is my choice." She turned and walked away from the yard, not looking back. After a moment, Eli followed, because somehow the idea of letting her walk alone felt worse than any fear he had ever known. The ranch was quiet when they arrived, too quiet. The house was small, weather-beaten, the porch sagging with age. Eli apologized for everything, the dust, the empty rooms, the awkwardness of the situation, but Ayana listened without judgment. She had slept on cold ground beneath open skies. A roof, even a broken one, was still a blessing. The first weeks were difficult. They lived like strangers sharing borrowed space. Eli gave her the bedroom and slept near the fire. They spoke little, moved carefully around each other, learning habits and silences. At night, Eli lay awake, wondering if he had made a terrible mistake, or the first right one of his life. Ayana worked hard, harder than anyone Eli had known. She repaired clothes, tended the garden, helped with the horses. But she also sang softly in the evenings, songs that carried loss and hope in equal measure. Slowly, the ranch began to feel less empty. Trouble came, as it always does. Word spread. Men came asking questions, offering money, making threats. They said Eli had no right to her, that she belonged to someone else. That freedom had a price that kept being paid. One night, the barn was set on fire. Flames lit the sky, and Eli ran through smoke and heat to save the horses, coughing, burning, refusing to let fear decide again. Ayana stood beside him afterward, ash on her face, hands trembling. "This is my past," she said quietly. "It will not stop." Eli looked at the ruins of his barn, at the life he had nearly lost, and then at her. "Then we face it together," he said. "That's what husbands do, I think." They stood their ground. When the men returned, they found not a weak rancher, but a man who had finally decided who he was. They found not a broken woman, but one who stood tall, unafraid, her choice clear. The confrontation was brutal but brief. The law was called. Truth came out. Chains were broken for good. Winter passed. Spring followed. On a quiet morning, Eli and Ayana stood by the fence, watching new grass push through the soil. She reached for his hand, and this time he did not hesitate. Love had crept in slowly, built from respect, shared work, and the courage to choose each other every day. "You never had to stay," Eli said softly. "I stayed because you saw me," Ayana replied. "And not as something to own, but as someone to stand beside." For, in a land known for taking, they had given each other something rare: freedom, chosen, love earned, and a future neither had believed possible. And that, more than any payment, changed everything.